Monday. This is the Advance. I'm Michael Quinn Sullivan, sitting, of course, with Brandon Walton, senior editor, Texas Scorecard. We are glad to be with you today. We generally don't talk about Texas Scorecard, kind of our guiding the principles underlying kind of our internal work is, hey, we're not the story, we're not part of the story. We just talk about what citizens are doing, what your officials are doing, what the people that your officials have hired are doing. Usually it's bad. And that's definitely the case when we look at public education, where we've spent a lot of time looking at these predators in our schools, exposing this horrible stuff that no one wants to talk about and that many schools prefer to sweep under the rug. And Brandon, over the weekend, the State Republican Executive Committee took notice of the work of Aaron Anderson, our investigative reporter at Texas Scorecard, with a pretty big honor.
Yes, exactly. Aaron Anderson, who folks know as somebody who covers relentlessly a lot of these stories of predators in Texas schools, have now been really covering this in earnest for the last year or two. And these stories continue to ramp up. And not only do we see these stories happen, but we also have seen action start to take place where you've seen actual legislation move through the process, more and more parents speaking out. It was very cool to see the State Republican Executive Committee over the weekend passing a resolution unanimously commending Aaron Anderson and her courageous journalism in that field. And this is the accolades are not why we do it, but certainly seeing the actual movement and seeing parents and ultimately these victims be able to have their voice heard is certainly what motivates it, and very, very cool to see that recognized this weekend.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I think the important thing with that coverage, it's not that Aaron likes covering this stuff. In fact, the conversation she and I often have, and Brandon, we've had the same conversation, it's enough to make you want to pour bleach on your eyeballs, right? And in fact, we tend to, rightly or wrongly, we tend to kind of sanitize some of the reporting because it is really gross, talking about hurting children. And Aaron is just relentless in going through that. And she is, because this is our responsibility. This is our responsibility as parents, as taxpayers, as voters. This is our responsibility. And sure, the superintendent is at fault, the school board's at fault, these people who hire, certainly the teachers involved are at fault. But this is where we have to do much better. And our coverage is centered around making sure folks understand what's happening so then they can start asking better questions, start being more engaged. Look at the typical school district election in Texas, and you're talking 8%, 10%, 15% turnout. So functionally 80%, 85%, 90% of the registered voters say, whatever, I don't care. And that's when the inmates run the asylum. We need more people involved. That's why we do this kind of coverage.
Yeah, very great to see that. And education was really a big focus, I would say, of a lot of the resolutions that passed during this SREC meeting on Saturday. It wasn't as event-filled as maybe some of the past quarterly meetings they've had where they've been talking about things like censures. That typically is what happens at the December year-end meeting here. But another resolution, something we'll be writing about this week, is the parties really coming out strongly against the Texas Association of School Boards. They have been the target of a lot of concerned parents who have looked at what's happening in school districts and saying that a lot of the direction that school boards are taking against parents in some of these cases, a lot of that direction is trickling down from the Texas Association of School Boards, which is this taxpayer-funded lobbying organization that operates out of Austin. and has their tentacles in almost all of Texas's over 1,200 school districts. And so that's something that's coming up this week that we'll certainly be talking about.
Something that's happening today
Mm-hmm.
this is the final day of filing for a place on either the Republican
Yes.
or Democrat primary nominating election.
6 o'clock.
Yeah,
Yes.
6 o'clock today. You were, I think, the first person to tweet about this, Brandon. Early this morning, Colin Allred, after months of running for the Democrat nomination for the U.S. Senate, is now out of the race. What's he doing?
Colin Allred is somebody who used to be in Congress. Remember that, right? He was a congressman.
And he was like a ninth string football NFL player, right?
And played at Baylor as well. We've got the whole circle there. But
sick him.
But Colin Allred didn't run for re-election, lost his seat, and ran for Senate in 2024. We might remember that. He ran for Senate against Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz and soundly defeated.
I'm about to say, did Colin Allred win that race?
No.
No, okay, yeah.
No, he did not, yes. And Ted Cruz defeated him by 10 or so points, if I recall. So Colin Allred decides, well, I'm going to run again. And this time he's running for the Senate seat that's up this time, right? The one currently held by Senator John Cornyn. Well, he gets in the race, and you have James Tallarico, who's a state representative from Austin, who also joins that race.
Very left, white, liberal guy.
And it's been sort of stagnating for a while. Well, this morning, Colin Allred says, you know what, actually, I've decided I don't want to be a part of a bruising Democrat Senate race. I'm going to drop out. I'm going to run for Congress instead. Now, this is interesting for two reasons. One, Colin Allred's going to be running in Texas's newly redrawn. Remember all these districts are pretty different than they were last time. Newly redrawn District 33, where he's going to be facing off against Julie Johnson, somebody who's been there for 2 terms now, a former member of the Texas House herself, has been in Congress there. So you've got an intra-Democrat party fight there. And then the main reason, the main instigator behind the fact that Colin Allred is leaving the Senate race is to make room for an announcement that we're expecting literally any minute now this afternoon from Representative Jasmine Crockett announcing for Senate. And this will now,
and significantly, a U.S. representative in one of those seats that was made a Republican seat.
Exactly. And so she could be, it looks like she will be announcing her Senate campaign any moment now. Jasmine Crockett, somebody who has been a lightning rod for national media attention, most of it not exactly positive, right? I mean, she said a lot of crazy things. She's compared Donald Trump to Hitler multiple times. She's made disparaging comments about Governor Abbott and Senator Ted Cruz and a lot of Republicans. Somebody who's really gotten, I would say, a lot of attention. But it looks like she's going to be entering this race, and it will be her versus James Tallarico. And a lot of the Democrat, politicos, people that follow those races say that that she will likely become the Democrat nominee in November. Now, this is interesting because over on the Republican side of things, of course, we don't know right now who the candidate's going to be. Normally, you would assume that the incumbent who is Senator Cornyn in this case, would be the candidate in the November general election. But as we've discussed in depth here, you've certainly had multiple polls that show John Cornyn is lagging behind his challengers, Ken Paxton and Wesley Hunt. And so that race is certainly open now. Now you've got this Democrat race as well for Senate. A lot of shifting things here as we head just hours before the filing deadline.
All right, and we're also just about 30 minutes away from you jumping in your vehicle and heading down into the capital city for a big announcement from Governor Abbott and Turning Point USA.
Yeah, so Governor Abbott is holding an event this afternoon with Turning Point USA. There's been light on details, but it's expected to do with an announcement that was made by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick several weeks ago. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said he would be donating $1 million from his campaign, I think, towards an effort to put a Turning Point chapter in every school in Texas. The Lieutenant Governor is going to be joining the governor at this press conference, and so it's expected to potentially have something to do with that. this is just a string of interesting news, I would say, that's come out of the governor just in the recent days. I mean, just yesterday, you had an interview, Michael, come out where the governor backed away from some of his previous support for casino gambling. Right, a couple years ago, Governor Abbott said that he was essentially open to the idea. Now he says he's not there yet. And so, it's some interesting news dealing with the governor.
Nothing sharpens the focus of a politician's mind like an election result.
Well, that's true.
And you can look in North Texas where the casino-backed candidate in that special Senate election came in a distant third place. Really explaining kind of where real Texans are when it comes to this crony push by crony casino interests that generally work in China to try to get a foothold in Texas.
Exactly. And so especially once we pass tonight, that filing deadline, I think this is really where the primary campaign begins in earnest. We're going to finally have a lot of those seats set, specifically a lot of these open congressional seats where there are just, I mean, it's dozens and dozens of candidates. It's hard to keep track of some of these candidates that are filing for these open races for Congress. A lot of open seats and a lot of candidates in those races does mean that we'll probably have a lot of runoff elections in May as well.
And, just for the things that matter to most people, early voting starts in mid-February. We're essentially 2 months out from early voting getting started for Election Day on March 3rd. So, this is coming quick for a lot of folks.
Exactly. And so this is really, we're going to have the filing deadline tonight. People sort of tune out a little bit more, I would say, during the holidays, right? Christmas, New Year's. But once we get into January, it's going to be a 6-week or so sprint for a lot of those offices.
Outstanding. All right. Thanks for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you out around the Lone Star State. Have a great Monday.